Hi, Corina. How are you?
Hello, good, thank you.
Lovely to see you today. So a little bit different from my previous webinar series. So Corina, you're from Ear to the Ground, and Ear to the Ground invested in Ecovadis. How many years ago did you start that process?
2 years ago.
Okay, and you've achieved silver, I believe?
Silver, and we're just going through recertification again. So hopefully
Brilliant.
gold.
Fantastic. So the reason I wanted to draw some comparisons to Ecovadis and Bcorp, so they're both linked to sustainability, clearly. So I wanted to just talk to you about how and why you went about the Ecovadis certification, and then talk about some complementary, the ways they work together with B Corp and how it leads to more points if you went for the B Corp certification if you did have Ecovadis. So tell me a little bit more about why you went for Ecovadis.
Yeah, great. So at Ear to the Ground, we do recognise that ESG is it's a burning issue for our industry. So we really understand how urgency is escalating for businesses to get on board with ESG, that there are policy changes, coming down the line, and regulatory changes as well. And we also spotted things like the awards criteria in our industry is starting to change. So if we look at Cannes Lion, which is something that our business is actively is working on kind of CAN submissions. For example, even just looking at those awards alone, the criteria is changing to include ESG within there. We also are aware from a procurement perspective with clients that ESG is no longer becoming a passive policy piece, let us see what you're going to achieve by 2030. The reality is they are changing their policies, and they will not work with you unless you're accredited with businesses, organizations, accreditation organizations like Ecovadis or like B Corp. So for us, actually, it's ESG is a live risk to agency survival. So it is on a risk register, and really, it's about our opportunity also for our employees to all be part of kind of a cultural shift within agencies as well, to be far more conscious of our impact in terms of what we're actually creating. So as a creative business, we put things out into the world in the advertising that we do, and our ideas lead to events and advertising that leaves a carbon impact. So really starting to be more conscious about how we're developing briefs and what we're putting out into the world, and the messaging that goes alongside that as well. So the number of factors, shifts in the industry, how we win awards, also to whether our clients will work with us in a few years' time. We really need to be ahead of all of those changes. So it's been essential for us. The Ecovadis registration came about actually in a conversation with a client. So again, through that procurement journey, they had raised that we needed to be Ecovadis scored, so we said, well, look, okay, we understand your commitment. They as a brand actually are B Corp, so you can see, I guess, in terms of what we're discussing here today, you can see the bridge between Ecovadis and B Corp is already in place in some of those bigger, and with that client in particular, that's a financial organization. So they already have the bridges, and they use Ecovadis for all of their supplier scoring. And so they're like, hey, we want you to be a part of this. We will need you to go through an Ecovadis scoring exercise. And so that's how it came about. So we were aware, and we were having conversations around ESG, and then we have clients now who are B Corp, who really are meticulous about how they score their agencies, and so that's how we got there.
Fabulous. And so it's worth noting that B Corp and Ecovadis have both written independent papers about how they complement each other. Just for those who don't know much about Ecovadis or B Corp or one or the other, tell me, what's your point of view of the difference between the two certifications?
So for me, oh, this is a difficult question for me actually. The difference between the two, I think the difference between the two is I feel through the work that I've been doing with Ecovadis, I've found them more to be a real ally for our business in identifying really specific areas of improvement that are actionable for my team, as well as providing our business again, like far more kind of an active approach, in the sense that it has a training module. It gives us access to training for the team, the wider team, as well as for ourselves to upskill around various areas. So I find it very, very helpful, because it's not an overall kind of scoring and accreditation that, for me is, yes, it kind of audits the level at which our business is performing from a ESG perspective with B Corp, and has this incredible equity as a brand, and it's a connector of businesses. But with the work that we do with Ecovadis, what I find is more on a practical level for our business. It is where I'm getting hints and tips for each of our departments that we can separate out and let them know where we really need to improve from an ESG perspective, down to a policy level, in fact. So, individual policies that need improved, or individual ways of working. So my experience is more on the Ecovadis side, clearly, because I've been through that process. But I definitely know that, I see very much Ecovadis as a real guide for our working practice. And then with B Corp, I think it's this kind of really brilliant, prestigious accreditation that's going to connect me to other businesses in that same realm. But really, that Ecovadis is that incredible staging ground that is going to effectively coach us and train us together.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about, you said about the employee involvement. How does your team get involved?
So right now with Ecovadis, it tends to be on initiative-specific pieces. So as an example, and I think we may have discussed this previously, it's kind of a snowball. It's become a snowball effect for new initiatives within our business, and very much we're taking kind of the Ecovadis journey on as a bit of a journey that we're taking with employees also. So as an example, week we've kind of announced to the business that we are doing our first carbon quantification exercise, and so we've gone through that actually with the SME Climate Hub, but getting employees involved and making them, understanding that at the end of this, it's kind of taking another step along the ESG journey. So everything from them sharing their commutes through to other kind of, and I guess because it's an ESG, it's kind of much more broad ranging. So we have ED&I groups set up within the business. We have people kind of coaching and leading and mentoring the next kind of generations coming through the industry through mentoring positions, making sure that we're bringing more diverse talent into roles within the industry. So it spurred a number of different kind of very specific initiatives based, again, on some of the recommendations that Ecovadis have kind of flagged up in the scoring exercise.
Okay. And then if you think about your clients and then your employees, do you find that, so from a client point of view, do they recognise B Corp, Ecovadis equally so or differently?
Really differently. In terms of the level of prioritization, and I would say that it depends on how heavily regulated the industries are in individually. So obviously, as I've talked about, they're regulated industries like financial services, and also industries, where they're dealing with kind of high fat, sugar and salt products, for example. Those kind of industries where they're heavily regulated, you see that the procurement practice tends to be much more rigorous, and therefore their awareness of Ecovadis is really important. But one thing I would say, I've been recently in London presenting in front of a panel of judges from for an award. I won't say which one, but for an award, and we're in front of some of the biggest global brands in the world, financial services institutions, but also consumer products, sports brands, etc. In terms of the judging panel, all of them are very, very impressed when you can say that you're within the top 15% of businesses for ESG and you have the scoring criteria there. It's very impressive, and they're really you can see the kind of engagement in the room, because actually it's a shared concern. ESG is something that we need to stand shoulder to shoulder with clients, because it impacts their business also. You did also ask, I apologize, but you did, when you asked me what have employees done to get on board with ESG, we also did a really brilliant pilot on one of our clients so one of the things we've been really conscious to do, so on the journey with Ecovadis, really starting again to open up conversation about scope 3s, what are we doing around that area? Because scope 1 and 2, actually, we'd be surprised how simple that can be and straightforward that can be to quantify and control. But the scope 3s are much more complex. So we've done our first kind of eco-effectiveness case study recently, whereby we had all of the team engaged with a really clear plan on how we were going to use a number of things. So the advertising association, the brief methodology, productions, and how to limit the carbon that come out of production kind of services, and also using things like the Ad Green calculator to start measuring carbon impact. And the team were really deeply engaged, with making sure that they were doing that kind of diligently and bringing that plan. The intention of that is obviously then how do we scale that? How do we roll that out across all of the clients? How complex was that experience? But actually everybody left the experiment just really feeling better about the work that they were creating. The fact that they were thinking about their impact before they went into it, minimizing carbon throughout the whole process, and having conversations about it. It actually, it's one of those things where it feels like it might feel complex, but actually the experience is actually more fun and interesting because it's new certainly for now. So the next challenge is then how do you make that scalable and apply it to all projects? But that was a real success for us in terms of a pilot and a trial, because it was much more straightforward than we anticipated. Yeah.
So to onto the employee side, from brand recognition, would you say that from a candidate attraction, employee retention point of view, Ecovadis versus B Corp, what's more recognised in that way?
100% B Corp. We really know and we understand how enthused the team are around the concept, the idea of becoming a B Corp. Our team, obviously, we've spoken to them at large and said, obviously, that is the ultimate ambition for our business as we continue to scale. But for now, that the Ecovadis piece and communicating clearly with accountable targets to the team on where we're up to in our ESG journey. I think particularly we look at the generation entering the advertising industry now, and it is one of their kind of top criteria. There's a real sense of pride. So yeah, I think we have had the feedback, from employees that working for a B Corp would make them really proud. I think we can't as an employer lose sight of that. I think it's an essential consideration in terms of pursuing that accreditation in future.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of bringing it to a sort of summary, really, which is that people often ask when they're about to embark on a B Corp journey, which, they look at the different accreditations. And I think the answer is that they are complementary. So that the fact that you as an agency are Ecovadis certified, you are ready to become a B Corp, and that's the natural next step. And I understand your point of view about procurement and heavily regulated industries requiring these certificates for sustainability point of view. And as you say, the B Corp brand awareness from a candidate point of view is growing ever more so. So I don't want to ask a leading question, but would that be the main reason that you would go for the B Corp certification?
I think also because our values are to do the right thing. And I think there's a real sense that there's a real sense and passion, ear to the ground, that, you know, particularly where we represent through much of the scope of the work that we do with brands, we're representing voices of you know, Gen Z, Gen Alpha in the work that we do in advertising. So it would be remiss of us not to listen as a business. You know, yes, they're going to be our employees of the future, but they're also those that are judging kind of businesses now. And so there's a real sense of, we, you know, as a business, we really want to be doing the right thing. Our brand marketeers as well. You know, I think one of the stats that I've seen recently is that 82% of marketeers agree that businesses really need to be braver in communicating their sustainability efforts. You know, we want to be brave there. We don't want to be greenwashing. We don't want to be green hushing. We want to do it in partnership with our clients, and I think there's a real commitment from us to do the right thing and move towards that.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story, because I know we've been speaking a while now about your Ecovadis journey and what it's done for your business as well, and involving all your team. So thank you for your time, Corina, and I will see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.